Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Big Ten Under 10 on the Hoosier Network. Graham Nash and Adam Oppenheim with you as per usual, bringing you more updates from women's sports. The Big Ten women's basketball tournament was played last week, so where else should we start but on the hardwood? UCLA are your 2025 Big Ten women's basketball tournament champions. They took down number 10 Nebraska by 11 in the first round of the tournament and followed that by beating number 3 Ohio State by 29 points to reach the final game. On the other side of the bracket, the USC Trojans took down number 9 Indiana by 5 in their first round, and the next day they took down number 5 Michigan by 8 to get to the finals. So it was USC and UCLA for a third time, the number 1 Trojans and the number 2 Bruins. USC won both of the regular season matchups, but they couldn't beat Lauren Betts and UCLA for a third time. The Bruins won by 5 in Indianapolis. Adam, we'll turn to you now as our expert. USC pretty much led the entire way up until that fourth quarter. Why did everything change in the last frame?
Well, it was the UCLA defense just clamping down on USC. It was really impressive. UCLA only scored 20 points in the quarter, which is probably about their average amount, but they held USC to 13 points. USC in the fourth quarter, 4 for 19 from the floor. 3 for 10 was Juju Watkins. She also had 0 assists, so that's only contributing to about 6 points for Juju Watkins. They were 1 for 8 from 3 as a team in that quarter and also had 6 turnovers. And even though UCLA, they were 8 for 15 from the three-point line, they didn't attempt any three-pointers in the fourth quarter. Instead, they got to the rim. They were 5 for 8 from the floor and 10 for 10 from the line. The one downside is they had 9 turnovers in that quarter, but USC was they were worse on that offensive end, and a lot of it has to do with the UCLA defense.
When you look at the season rivalry between USC and UCLA, it's currently USC 2 wins, UCLA 1 win, but the Bruins in the AP rankings are ranked the top team, and USC is ranked the 4th team in the country. Why is that?
Well, I think UCLA has overall a better resume, and this is coming from someone who I thought UCLA would win both games against USC. So I think when the March Madness bracket comes out, I think UCLA is going to be a higher 1 seed than USC. I think they're both going to be 1 seeds. But then you look at that Big Ten tournament game, and that's a game UCLA just needed to win. Here's some of these stats, Graham. So UCLA, they won by 5 points against USC. Everything went UCLA's way shooting-wise. 52% from the floor, 53% from 3, 8 for 21 from the line. USC shot 34% from the floor, 28% from 3, 11 for 13 from the line. Juju Watkins was 9 for 28, and they were 8 for 28 as a team from 3. And you only win by 5. So you ask, where does the difference come from? How about the turnovers? UCLA had 24 turnovers, 8 from Kiki Rice, 6 from London Jones. But USC had 19 turnovers. You're saying, oh, it's only a 5 turnover difference. So what's the big deciding factor? USC had 26 more field goal attempts. 26.
Wow.
UCLA, Lauren Betts, only had 5 rebounds the entire game. If you shoot the ball 26 more times, you usually win. But this is a game UCLA. I mean, if you lose this game and you shot that much better from the floor, it comes down to your own mistakes, not rebounding the ball and turning it over. But luckily for them, they won by 5. But if you look at all the stats, I mean, this does not happen often. A team having 26 more shots and losing by 5, but the shooting was the big difference.
Wow. Those are some crazy statistics. Adam, last question before we move on to softball. Give me one team that you think overachieved in the tournament and one team that underachieved in the tournament.
I think for overachieved, I'm going to go with Michigan. Now, their first round game, well, they had a bye, but their second round game, they beat Washington by 8. But then they dominated Maryland, 98-71. That was a really impressive game. That was a 25-0 run in the first half that fueled the Wolverines to just blow out the Terrapins, who have looked like a really solid team, at least top 4 in the Big Ten this year. But then the game against USC, they were in it the entire game. They were leading for most of the first half. They lost by 12, but they lost the fourth quarter 29-18. So really, they were in the game for 3 quarters and then just kind of ran out of gas. And it is hard if you have an extra game than a team playing again the next day in the Big Ten tournament. Kiki Iriafen had 25 and 11. Juju Watkins, 20 points, 11 rebounds for USC. She had 6 turnovers, 7 for 17 from the floor. Michigan did a good job defending her. They were in a position to win. It seemed like they just ran out of gas down the stretch. As for the underachieving team, I'm going to go with Ohio State. They got the double bye. They snuck by Iowa by 1 point. They didn't even face the harder team, which I think was Michigan State, even though Iowa obviously did beat them. And then not only losing to UCLA, but getting blown out is a little bit concerning if you're an Ohio State fan, losing by 29. 2 single-digit scoring quarters for Ohio State. Jelani Cambridge had 10 points. That was the leading scorer for the Buckeyes. And they were out-rebounded 43-25. UCLA almost shot 50% from the floor, 11 for 24 from 3. London Jones hit 6 threes for UCLA. That was her season high. And the thing I'm looking at most as a statistic is 0 free throw attempts for UCLA. Some could point to that being good defense. Ohio State was not aggressive enough on the defensive end. If a team has 0 free throw attempts, it means you're not playing aggressive enough on defense, and that's what happened in this game. Ohio State was letting UCLA get whatever they wanted, and they end up getting blown out.
Well, Selection Sunday is right around the corner, so those Buckeyes might still have a good chance to make a run in the NCAA tournament. That's going to do it all for basketball right now. Let's move to the Diamond and talk some softball. Number 5, UCLA has now won 5 straight. They took down LMU twice by a total of 22 runs. They also took down Sacramento State twice by a total of 18 runs, and they beat San Diego State 5-0. By the way, 4 of those 5 wins for UCLA were in less than 7 innings. 8th-ranked Oregon went 4-1 in the Haynes-Sanders Classic, notably taking down number 10 Florida State 2-0 and 1-0, but their loss came against unranked Oregon State. Number 18, Nebraska, is doing one better than UCLA right now, winning 6 straight. Last week, they went 4-0 in the Big Red Spring Fling, winning 3 of 4 games in less than 7 innings. Lastly, both Ohio State and Indiana are receiving votes but aren't currently ranked. OSU went 4 for 5 in their home tournament last weekend, losing only to number 1 Texas. It was a close game, though, as Texas only won 4-2. Also, the Buckeyes bounced back nicely from the loss, taking down Notre Dame 3-2. Finally, in the Hoosier Classic, Indiana went 5-0, winning each game in less than 7 innings. They also took down Butler 13-0, giving them their 3rd shutout in the last 6 games. Adam, talk some softball. Which games or tournament results stick out to you the most from last week?
Well, there's a few. I'll start with Oregon, beating Florida State twice, losing to Oregon State. But I'm going to take more into account the ranked games because I think those are more important. And it was 2 shutouts by 2 different Oregon pitchers, 2 complete game shutouts. They allowed 3 total hits in 2 games against a Florida State team who is comfortably in the top 20 in the nation. Also, Ohio State playing close with number 1 Texas. That's really impressive. If you're looking at the top of the Big Ten standings or preseason poll people would have, UCLA, Oregon, Ohio State's right there with them, and so is Indiana. You mentioned it, 6 straight run rules. Talked to head coach Shauna Stanton after the game. Said it doesn't matter who you play. I mean, you have to beat them, and they did by a lot. So that was really impressive. Lineup is hitting near 400 on the year. The question is going to be pitching going into Big Ten play. But if you're looking at Indiana's 1-4, it can probably stack up with anyone in the Big Ten.
And hey, Big Ten is just starting now, so still a lot of time for those teams like Indiana and Ohio State to get it going. That'll do it for softball. Let's move on to our last sport for the episode, women's tennis. It was a week of sweeps for the top-ranked teams as number 6, Michigan, swept Nebraska 4-0. Number 15, Wisconsin, swept Northwestern 4-0. And number 19, Washington, swept both Maryland and Rutgers 4-0. The only non-sweep was between UCLA and number 18, USC. The Trojans just hung on to win 4-3. And that wraps up today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Big thanks to our producer, Colin Dusick, for making all of this possible. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at B1G_under10, and come back in 2 weeks, as we won't have any shows next week due to spring break, for our next episode of Big Ten Under 10.